And I will say from a standpoint of somebody who has had a gun pointed at somebody in a home defense situation, you don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It never feels good. Um, and it's one of those that, because of my patience and my training, it gave us enough time to not take it any further than that.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it was a drunk neighbor looking for $5
Mm-hmm.
that was getting ready to come through our front window,
Mm-hmm.
and hitting our front window so hard it was moving our blinds. So it was kind of one of those things that, with the sound, I knew exactly where he was at. I was looking right at him, and because I could tell from where the blinds were swinging, patience saved his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know,
Mm. So these are all great examples, and this is great context to, uh, further our discussion here today. Um, if you were to lay this out for somebody, I think you kind of started there, and then I probably, you know, detoured you with some of my comments, questions, and wanting to get you properly introduced and whatnot. But if you were to lay this out for somebody, so let's just say somebody, they're willing to learn, they're
mhm,
interested, uh, there's a motivation there for whatever reason. They come to you and they're like, Brandon, I know I need to get more mindful and prepared about my personal and maybe even family's defense. Um, if you were to lay it out in kind of a, and not that things have to be step by step by step by step, but just sort of like, what are some of the core areas of focus or principles even, or skills that you would say, hey, because you kind of started there, like I said, you're like, hey, I'd recommend people learn about, you know, uh, decision making, and then you kind
mhm.
of, so like, lay it out for us. Give us kind of, what are the core principles here that we should be focusing on?
So I think from a core standpoint is we look at avoidance. So
Yeah.
I think behavioral changes. Um, like when people talk to me about home defense, first thing I ask them is, do they have deadbolts on their doors?
Mm.
Do they have an alarm system? Do they have cameras? Do they have things like that?
Do they use them?
And do they use them? Yep. Yep.
Deadbolts. Yeah.
Exactly. Uh, hey, I lived in the country for a while. We didn't lock our door ever.
Yeah,
Um,
I get
and
that attitude. I lived
yeah,
in the boonies as well when I was younger, especially.
yep. And
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things that you didn't have to worry about it,
Hmm.
but when you get into, urban and suburban areas, we need to think about that.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll be honest, we've got a family member that it drives me nuts that he'll lock his back door, but keep the key in the door. And he's got a
Mm.
window in the door, you know. So
Mm.
it's real easy to break the window, reach through, and unlock the door.
Mm.
And it drives me nuts. And I keep telling him, I'm like, would you stop doing that? But the mindset is, well, we live in a safe area, so it's not a problem. And I said, where do you think criminals are coming to get what they want?
Yep.
Because guess what? They don't have anything in their neighborhoods. And it's something that struggle of getting him to change that mindset has been very difficult. Now he
Hmm.
had some issues, and that mindset is starting to change. And that usually is what changes that mindset. So I think that if people are interested in self-defense at all, I think that's where they need to start, is sit down with a trainer that is familiar with behavioral things, that is willing to talk to them about behavioral changes and avoidance. Once we start into that, then look at the empty hand. Basic, and I'm not talking about 1 day self-defense classes. I'll say it right here. They don't work.
Hmm.
It's, an hour or two, um, training with an instructor is an hour or two.
Mhm.
How much are you going to develop and be able to apply what they're showing? That instructor may be the very best, greatest grandmaster in the world, but you're not. And you've spent 2 hours with that person. How much can you apply effectively from what they taught you?
Mhm.
But simple self-defense stuff. Natural movement. I like to do things where people will recognize natural movement. So like we have movements that kind of come up this way, right? But how do we do that? Well, that's cover your head.
Mhm.
You know, um, I'm not a big proponent to closed hand strikes for beginners. Why? Because they're likely going to break their hand, break their wrist, something else. And open hand strikes are more relaxed and end up causing more damage quicker if they're done properly.
Mhm.
So simple things like that. Are they reaching for their coffee mug in the morning? What does that look like in self-defense? Well, that can be a grab. You know, they can grab an ear or an arm or an appendage or something.
Mhm.
Um, how do we apply those things, those simple movements that we do every day to our self-defense? Then, if we feel like we absolutely must do a lethal, I'm a big proponent for people that, if they want to carry a gun and they are able to carry a gun, they should carry a gun.
Mhm.
Um, Living in Indiana, they issue permits at 18. I had my first concealed carry permit when I was 18 years old, and I was carrying a gun. And I wish I knew then what I know now,
Yep.
but as we all do, but that's where it really started changing for me. Why? I was going back and forth on a country state highway where the typical law enforcement response was 45 minutes away at any time and going back and forth at night to and from work,
Mhm.
and it's one of those things. As we
Yeah.
build into that lethal level, you know, when is it feasible? When is it justifiable? Which I'm sure you've had it, just like I think every instructor has had it, where they've had a student, at least one, that looked at them and gone, "Well, when can I actually apply it? When can I shoot somebody?"
Mhm. Don't you love that question? I've gotten that question.
Yeah,
When can you shoot somebody? Wait, you're looking for an opportunity to do so?
and it's exactly what goes through my mind. Yep,
Mhm.
yep. And I just sit there and I usually when somebody says that to me, I sit here and go, okay, so why are we having this conversation? Why is it going this way? Um, so I've gotten to the point now that I will tell people right off the bat, if you're looking for that, you're looking for the wrong answer. The answer is, when can we get away from it? When can we avoid it? Um, and you know, and are we ready for the aftermath if we have to?
Yeah.
You know, um, because people will say, well, that person was significantly bigger than me, and I've got this health condition or I got that health condition, so I shot them because they were trying to punch me in the face.
Right.
But um, and I think that that's where we go back to now. Once we've done the decision making, the um, the threat recognition, that's the empty hand self defense, the non lethal, and we look at that, we go, okay, so let's look at those behavioral cues. And did we have an opportunity to create some distance? And believe me, I'm not a big proponent for um, states that require a duty to retreat. I think that's super dangerous on
Mhm.
on many levels.
Mhm.
Um, but it also doesn't mean that I want people to stand there and risk their life to prove a point. I think that's even more dangerous in some ways. Um, but recognizing when things are truly a life threatening situation.